10 seconds, and then you can start.
Thank you.
Also, you got to press the got it. You might get a message saying got it. That the meeting's being live streamed. You have to click got it, otherwise it'll boot you out of the meeting. That's a new thing with Zoom.
Got it. I didn't get a got it message though.
If you didn't get it, that's fine. Just if you do, just make sure you got it. All right, we're live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 12th Town of Islip Planning Board meeting. You're just joining us. We'll be underway shortly. There are 4 items on the agenda this evening. I just want to take attendance. Mr. Frugieri? Here. Mr. Bruno?
Here.
Ms. Cruz?
Here.
Mr. Mattamore? Okay, no, Mr. Mattamore, and I know that we already have notice from Mr. Moriarty and Mr. Brown that they cannot attend this evening. So first item on the agenda is major subdivision preliminary approval, public hearing, Fanny Diaz Perez, MS 2021-001, north side of Palermo Street, number 0, approximately 290 feet east of Nickel Avenue, Central Islip. Applicant requests preliminary approval for a 2-lot major subdivision, which includes opening of the remaining portion of Palermo Street, Central Islip. Good evening to the applicant.
Hello.
You're live. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Joseph F. Pizzell, Blanda Visconti, 535 Broad Hollow Road, Suite B4, Melville, attorney for the applicant. We're here before the board tonight concerning a road opening related to a 2-lot subdivision. The premises is on the north side of Palermo Street, about 290 feet east of Nickel Avenue in Central Islip. It's rectangular in shape, 145 feet in width, 300 feet in depth, for a total lot area of 43,500 square feet, or 60 feet shy of an acre. It's zoned residence AA, which requires 20,000 square feet per lot. So that would make this lot 217.5% oversized. It's vacant. It's currently wooded, but there's no wetland or environmentally sensitive property. It was created on the map of Great River Estates, Section 4, filed September 26, 1923, so almost a century ago. And to put that in perspective, the president at the time was Calvin Coolidge. We're subdividing, as I said, into 2 lots. Both meet lot area. In fact, they're slightly oversized at 21,750 square feet. They each have 72.5 feet of width throughout. Residence AA presumes the 20,000 square feet comes from a 100 by 200 foot lot, but there was no zoning in the town of Islip in 1923, and that's when this property was created. We can't do that here. So we have the lot area, but we don't have the width, but that was how the lot was created in 1923. However, we provide more front yard, rear yard, side yard, and total side yard setback than the code requires. 41 feet of front. The rear yard is over 200 when 25 is required. Side yards of 19.6, 18 is required. Total side yard of 39.2 and 36 is required. And we have an FAR of 14.69%, well under the requirement. The property is on an unimproved section of Palermo Street. Palermo Street is improved to the west down to Nickel Avenue, and it's improved down to the east all the way to Montauk Avenue. But in the middle, in front of this lot, there is a strip of woods. The road does not, it goes through on paper, but it does not go through as far as being an improved street. Some years ago, there was a house built across the road. However, the road improvements were never installed as part of that job. My client had no interest, relationship, or connection to that site or its owner, so we're really not exactly sure why. However, my client has spoken with the owner of that lot, and they've reached an agreement concerning the completion of the roadway here. So the road will finally be done, basically because of this application. We need to get a little more information and finalize some details, and then it will be reduced to a written document. So following up after tonight, we would have some discussions with engineering to get that information and details, and then we'd iron them out with the property owner across the street and execute a written development agreement. As far as the surrounding area, it's zone AA where we are. Across Nickel is B. The only thing on Palermo that's not AA is the riding academy down about a long block to the east, which is business 3. Adjacent this property to the east, there was a nursery, commercial nursery, but I saw it today, and those improvements have been demolished and taken down. On west of this lot, there are homes on both sides of Palermo. To the east, there are homes on the south side, but the north side is a former nursery property. We believe that this application is a positive redevelopment of the property. In character at the area, will be an improvement to the neighborhood, and will finally complete the improvement of Palermo Street, which has been an issue for some time. If the board has any questions, I'm happy to address them.
Thank you. We're going to go to comments first, and then we'll come back for a staff report. Those that have signed up to speak, we'll call you in by name. We ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. If you have any questions, ask them. They will be addressed at the end of the comment period, not as you're asking them. First person I have signed up here is Catherine Molina. Ms. Molina, you're live. When you're ready, go right ahead. Ms. Molina, are you in the room? Yes,
Yes,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I do have a question. Is it going to be, because my family and I, we don't really approve, we wouldn't want it to be open. We do have kids who play here in the dead end and also on the other side. But I do have a question. If you guys were to open it, would you guys be able to clean it off maybe?
Would you say clean it off?
Yes, because there's a lot of wooden area, and the sidewalk wasn't done either. It just stops where the wooden area is. So if you guys were to like open it, but not open the street, are you guys able to do that? Or just, I guess like make the sidewalk, but not open up the street.
Okay, so that's your question. I'll pose that to staff and the applicant once we get through the comments.
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a Roni Umana. Once you're ready, you're in the room, just unmute, you can go ahead.
Sorry, I was muted.
No problem.
I actually live what's considered Belmore Avenue, but my side yard is on Palermo, and I am not really happy about the street being opened up either, because where this block sits, you have 4 blocks that intersect, and it's very dangerous that you're going to have cars coming off Connect flying down that street. I too have kids that play over on that dead end. It's a safe place for them to be, because I'm on a bus route. The buses drive crazy over here. They whip around the corners. It's a blind corner right in front of my house. So you have Belmore, Orange, Nickel, and Palermo all intersect at this corner. So now you're going to have another through street, and I just feel like it's going to be very dangerous. So if you were to open the street, are there going to be stop signs installed and such, to control the traffic that's coming through? Because as it is, people drive too fast over here with the kids and everything.
Thank you. We'll address that when we come back with the staff report. Thank you. I have a James Cunningham. You're in the room. Go ahead when you're ready. You're muted, Mr. Cunningham. If you're ready, you can unmute and go ahead. There you go. We can hear you now. There you go. Mr. Cunningham, you're not coming in clearly. Mr. Cunningham, we can't hear you.
Like I'm through or no?
You're breaking up. Try now.
Okay, better now? No.
Not really, no.
Sorry. All right. Well, yeah, I'm against the road anyway to put through. Because I live right next door.
Mr. Cunningham, I don't know if you want to try logging out and logging back in. We'll go to the next speaker and come back and see if that helps. The situation you're in. If you want to log out, log back in, we'll come back to you. And in the interim, we can go to Lydia. Is it Giannick? Is Lydia Giannick? I just need someone to move her into the room. I don't have the ability to do so. You're in the room, Lydia. If you want to unmute, you can go ahead and speak. Ms. Janik, Lydia, we have you in the room. If you unmute your mic, you can go ahead and speak. Okay, there you
Hi.
go. You're unmuted. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm at 98 Palermo, which is a few houses down from the property on the south side. My major concern happens to be if the street is opened up, the amount of traffic that will be coming through from all those streets, as someone politely put it prior. You know, any of that area right now, Connecticut Avenue happens to be becoming overwhelming as it is. So there is a lot of traffic that comes through Lowell on the street behind us, which is Atlantic. And then that's my major concern is the fact that it would be a lot of traffic. And then there are children in the area on all sides. So it is a concern.
Thank you very much for your speaking this evening. I'm going to try Mr. Cunningham one more time to see if he's able to speak. If not, Mr. Cunningham, you can certainly submit your comments afterwards to the planning department. Let's try one more time. Mr. Cunningham, you're in the room. Want to go ahead and try? Mr. Cunningham?
Hello?
There we go. That's
Can you
better.
hear me now?
Yes, good. Good to go.
Oh, great. Yeah, I actually live on the property right next door to where the event is place. And, I obviously like it ended because we built a house 10 years ago. But told me, no, they're never going to open that through. It's going to be a 10. And, my kids, my son old now, but when he was a kid, he played there, and all the kids were happy. We tried to open it before we came to the hall, and I guess they didn't do that. But like they say, at the end, the west end of the block is was 4 blocks meet, and there's always traffic and almost accidents come and go. And so I would rather it not be cut through myself. The other thing is, that piece of land that's getting to split it in half, they're proposing to split it in half and put 2 houses there. I mean, would we all be allowed to do that, or put like the flag, what do they call that, flagpole driveway, and my last 150 feet split myself to do 90 by 150 plots or the house in the back? It's getting congested. But, and as far as, the another thing which I know that concern this maybe is there's a lot of nature there. We have foxes that come through there, and we got our first deer came this year, and all kinds of wildlife in there. Those are all going to be, I know they're from the park, probably Connecticut's close by, but they kind of live there. They come out all the time. All those animals will be, I guess, either destroyed or pushed out of their home. So, these are the few concerns that we have. But basically, though, the cutting through of the street is something that nobody there wants, and that's pretty much all that I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. We got 99% of what you said at the beginning. You were a little broken up. So if there's anything you want to submit in writing, please do so to the planning staff. But I think we have the gist of everything. You're not in support of it for several reasons: the concerns of traffic, the nature, and also whether or not everybody else would be allowed to do the same with their lots. So that's what I have down as comments from you. Thank you. That's everyone I see who has signed up to speak on this. If anybody wants to speak that came in late, can you hit the raise your hand function and we'll have you come in now and speak? Not seeing anyone. Oh, we do have Vincent O'Brien. So if we can bring Mr. O'Brien in. Mr. O'Brien, you're in the room. If you want to go ahead and speak, you can go ahead now. Mr. O'Brien? Hi. Mr. O'Brien, go ahead and try now. Does anybody else hear Mr. O'Brien? I see his mic is working on the thing, but I don't hear anything coming through. Mr. O'Brien, we cannot hear you. All right, so Mr. Brown, we can't hear. If you want to log out and log back in, I'm going to go ahead and ask for the staff report, and then we can come back to you if you're back in the room when we come back in, so we're not able to hear you. So not seeing anyone else raising their hand, I'm going to go to Mr. Gonzalez to give us a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This residence AA zoned approximately 1 acre property is currently vacant and heavily wooded. It is located at the western terminus of the unopened portion of Palermo Street. The proposal is to subdivide the property, construct 2 single-family dwellings, while opening approximately 100 feet of the unopened portion of Palermo Street. This immediate area has a long history, which I will briefly summarize. Road opening 2003-006. This involved the extension of Palermo Street from the four-way intersection that is very close to this property, about 290 feet to the west. From that intersection, Palermo Street was opened approximately 330 feet. Full pavement width, curb, sidewalk, and drainage. 2 single-family homes were constructed on the north side, 1 on the south side. That work has been completed for quite some time. Road opening 2009-001, 60 Palermo Street, which is across the street from the subject property, fronting on the unopened portion of Palermo as well. The approval was to construct 1 single-family dwelling and to only open 50 feet on the east side of the unopened section of Palermo. The 50-foot opening was agreed upon at the time by the board, staff, and the applicant, as a full opening was considered too large a burden for one home. However, the applicant was required to submit a $25,000 community improvement fee to fund the improvement of the four-way intersection to the west, with the work to be done by DPW. This was in anticipation that the intersection needed to be improved in order to facilitate the eventual complete opening of Palermo Street in the future. That intersection improvement plan, as well as this road opening application, was approved in 2010. Time lapsed and the applicant was granted a reapproval in 2012. However, none of the required bonds and fees were posted. The property was subsequently purchased by a new applicant, whom was required to submit a new application as the previous had expired. That brings us to road opening 2013-001. April of 2013, a new applicant requested reapproval of the previous road opening for the 50-foot extension. However, was also requesting the $25,000 community improvement fee be eliminated. The board denied the request for the fee relief, however, reapproved the road opening subject to the same prior conditions. That fee was submitted in May of 2013. A building permit for the new house was issued in 2015. A meeting was held in 2016 with engineering and DPW. The consensus was that the vacant property to the north, which is the subject application tonight, when they came in for development, additional funding or matching may be required from the new owner to potentially help fund that intersection improvement, in addition to opening the rest of Palermo Street. At this point, multiple extensions have been granted for that 50-foot extension to the east. However, work is still not completed. Issues were encountered during construction. Work has stopped. And to my knowledge, the home is not CO'd. The work is not done either. The remaining 100, if the remaining 100 feet of Palermo were to be opened by the applicant, the other 50 feet needs to be finished. There were purportedly discussions between those two private parties in regards to completing the entire 150 feet. I know Mr. Bizel had spoken to that. I'd like to get a little more information on that, whether that be tonight or after the hearing, touch base with them and see what's going on. We do recommend those discussions continue and we get some concrete information on what the agreement would be before the town makes any decision on this application. In addition, the applicant must also apply to the ZBA for lot width variances on these two proposed lots. And as well, the engineering department is awaiting a current report from the Division of Traffic Safety to weigh in on this application and the prior approved intersection improvement plan, everything that ties in the traffic, if the road were open, the intersection improvement plan, what the recommendations would be, any safety traffic measures. We're all waiting for comments on all those things. So based on that, staff recommends the board reserve decision until additional feedback is received. The variances are granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the applicant works with the owner of 60 Palermo to solidify details of a potential full road opening.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. I know Mr. O'Brien came back, but it looks like he's gone again. Does anybody, Wendy, do you see him in the room? Looks like he left again.
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so it looks like he's left. So from there, let's go on to questions from the board. Tana, can you just speak about one question I think that was asked is, can this project be completed without the road being opened?
So the way this lot exists, it essentially has no frontage on an open portion of Palermo Street. So unfortunately, in order to get access to any potential new home that goes on this property, whether that be one or two, it doesn't matter, the road would have to be extended. And by virtue of that, they are required to meet current New York State Fire Code requirements. And that requires a turnaround for emergency vehicles, usually a cul-de-sac or a different configuration, but that cannot be accommodated in the right of way. Obviously, it's only 50 feet wide. So that would mean that they would have to construct that on the property. It would eat into the lot area that would have to be dedicated to the town eventually. And that still doesn't solve the problem on the other end where the 50-foot extension was done. That has no turnaround because it was anticipated that this road would eventually be opened fully. So, a full road opening seems to be the only resolution to this. And that's why the intersection plan was also approved to anticipate that.
And the full road opening would have completed sidewalks?
Yes, so it'd be full sidewalk on north and south, curbs, street drainage, full pavement width, everything.
Okay, and then my next question is, I think it was Mr. Cunningham asked about, can then everybody, if they want to have split their lots and put a residence behind it or not? What are the requirements in the area?
So for this particular zone, depending on, I guess, for at least this immediate area, Palermo Street, adjacent to these lots, it's AA zoning, which is half acre, 20,000 square feet minimum, 100 feet wide. Obviously, if they would like to split their properties, they have every right to apply for a variance if it's required. That's through the Board of Appeals. So that is the process that the applicant tonight would go through as well, which is another discretionary action at a public hearing before a board. So.
Thank you. I'm just going to say, Wendy, can you put Mr. O'Brien in to let him have his, and then we'll go back to Mr. Bezell and the board for questions.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien, you should be in the room if you'd like to speak. Mr. O'Brien, just unmute if you want, and you can go ahead and speak. Mr. O'Brien? Yep, we cannot hear. I see that you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you on this end. It's a problem on your end. Okay. We unfortunately can't hear you, Mr. O'Brien. If you'd like to submit your comments to the planning department in writing, we'll happily accept them in writing and make sure they're distributed to the board members, but we just can't hear you this evening. With that, I want to turn to the board for any questions. Or any questions from the board members?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Frugieri.
Tanner, it appears traffic safety has not finalized their plan for the intersection.
The plan was approved back in 2010, but obviously 12 years ago, I'm not sure if they would like to, revise that, implement any additional measures as far as street alignment, maybe stop signs, things of that nature. I know all of that was pretty much incorporated into the design at the time, but they may have additional comments that could help that situation.
Okay, good. I don't feel we have enough information to make any type of decision. I agree with the staff recommendation to reserve decision tonight. But when this does come back, I think we need to know what plan traffic safety is proposing for that intersection. So the community residents can also know what is being proposed.
And that's certainly one of the questions that it was asked earlier, is in terms of what traffic control devices will be put in place if in fact the intersection is open. So I think we certainly do need that information for us to consider, as well as for the neighbors to know that. Are there further questions from the board? Not seeing any. Mr. Bazell, did you want to add anything?
No, I mean, I just say, look, I've been involved in this less than a week. I'm not really familiar with the details of the road improvements for 60 Palermo across the street. But to complete the agreement between the two property owners, we need to understand what work is being done. Until you understand the nature and details of the work, you can't write up the agreement to perform it. So we will be in contact with Tanner and follow the progress. And once we know enough details, then we will put it in a written format and complete an agreement.
Okay, that certainly makes sense. And I think we need more information. And we also need to, if you're on the call and you live in the community, you want more information, you should reach out to the planning department once we have more information in terms of what the traffic study looks like. That'll be done there. Or you'll also, when it's being brought back, there'll be a notice that'll let you know that we're hearing this matter again. It won't be a public hearing, but there'll be a notice to listen to what goes on at the meeting. That being said, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to close this public hearing. We can leave it open for 30 days so that Mr. O'Brien and others that might not have been able to speak tonight will have an opportunity to submit written comment. And we reserve decision based on the staff comments.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Frugieri to close the public hearing this evening, but leaving it open for 30 days for written comment and then reserve decision. Is there a second to that? Mr. Mattermore? Second by Mr. Mattermore. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions, we are reserved on this matter. Thank you. And again, if you're here on this as a member of the community, you can reach out to the planning department. They'll let you know the next steps and if we get more information on the traffic that comes back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 2 on the agenda, site plan modification, public hearing, Tinker Auto Parts SP 2020-061, north side of Suffolk Avenue, 100 feet west of Fulton Street, Brentwood, 1091 Suffolk Avenue. Applicant requests relaxations of landscaping, parking, and buffer in connection with the expansion of an existing multi-tenant commercial building. Good evening to the applicant.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi,
Go ahead.
I'm Jack Roseberry, architect. I'm trying to get the video screen so you can see what I look like. Oh, there it is. Hey, there you are. All right. Hello. My name is Jack Roseberry, architect. I'm the architect for this application. The application is at 1091 Suffolk Avenue in Brentwood. Notifications and affidavit of mailing and posting were delivered to planning earlier this afternoon. This site plan modification before the board is for an addition, one-story addition and alterations to the existing retail store. The addition to the building is 1,724 square feet in area and is an expansion of the existing retail space. The alterations to the building involve the documentation of the existing storage mezzanine in the facility and the connection to the new structure. 2017, this application came before this board for legalization of the existing structures and parking on the property. Although the removal of the curb cuts and the installation and new entrance locations on the property were approved by Suffolk County Department of Public Works, and the site plan was reviewed by the board, planning staff in this office were never able to come to a final agreement on the configuration of the parking on the front of this property. The original application and the existing parking configuration had less stalls, more building area, and more configuration issues. The original property had a zoning board grant for the rear addition dating back to 1960, and the certificate of occupancy for the current certificate of occupancy for this building reads for a single family residence on this property, as well as the current barber shop in the rear addition. It was then suggested, Tanner Gonzalez and I, and this application has been going on since 2010. I don't know if Tanner was even in college then, but it was suggested informal meetings with Tanner and myself, and an addition could possibly be pursued to allow to clean up some of the issues on the site. This proposal before the board this evening allows for an increase in parking from the original 15 more or less stalls to 18 stalls, increases the buffer on the rear of the property from 1 foot to 5 foot in the parking area and 10 feet in the building area. It allows for a clear area of exit and entry for vehicles coming on and off the site on the east side. This office, the applicant and the planning staff have had more than one conversation with the owner of the property to the west, Suffolk Properties, about a possible joint parking agreement. We've been met with resistance, and there's been never really any traction on that. There is an informal verbal agreement that allows the taker to use one car stall on the lot to the west. Please note that the west side of the property does contain a right-of-way as described on the site plan. To between the buildings allow taker to access the north side of the property. It's noted that Taker Auto Parts East is the most successful of the owner's 4 operations. There's notice that even though this is a retail use, because of the high requirement of storage for auto parts, that the retail volume of customers would be much less than a typical retail store. A lot of the volume delivered to the store is delivered from the store to various dealerships and repair shops, and would not involve customers at the store. I have noted during numerous visits to the site that the parking area to the store does not seem to be filled with cars all the time, and it doesn't get to the point where you're uncomfortable parking there. The architectural elevations as submitted to planning involve extending the existing brick facade and alternating with 5-pond panels or glazing to keep the simple appearance of the building. The existing front facade will be repaired as needed, and the existing block structure north, east, and west elevations towards the north side of the building will be refurbished, repaired as needed, and painted. That concludes my brief presentation. I'll be ready to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. I do not have anybody signed up to speak on this. Did anybody join late who wishes to be heard? Please hit the raise your hand function now. I do have a Thomas Biscoglio. You're in the room. Once you unmute, sir, you can go ahead and speak. Did we lose? Mr. Biscoglio, if you unmute, you can go ahead and speak.
Hello?
Yep, go ahead. You can go ahead and speak.
Yes, I was just wondering because I've been working at Tinker over 14 years, and the parking and stuff around here is actually not bad. I don't know why everybody's going all this stuff about parking, but I would like to know how long everything's going to happen, because I do live upstairs with my wife who's sick, got a lot of problems from COVID, and I have my dog and my daughter, and I would like to know, what's going to happen to me, because I really don't have no money to move, and I've been there for a long time now, and I've been working for the company for over 14 years. So, I don't want to end up in the streets, and just the parking's I've been here over 14 years, and there's not one accident or nothing out here. Everything's been fine.
Thank you. We'll see if we can get you some answers.
I don't want to end up in there, I would like to know who's going to help me move. Because, I have my wife has no income or nothing. I'm taking care of everything.
Thank you, Mr. Biscoglio.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else who would wish to be heard that came in late? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to go to Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This about half-acre split zone business 1 and residence AA parcel is, as Mr. Roseberry stated, currently improved with Tinker Auto Parts. It's kind of a multi-tenant commercial building. It was built in the early 50s with additions being built and CO'd through the 80s. A 50-foot depth extension was granted by the ZBA in 1971 to allow a further addition near the northerly property line. That's the handled portion of the property, as you can see on the site plan on the screen. A prior site plan application was before this board in 2017, SP 2011-052. However, decision was reserved to allow staff to work with the applicant on site plan design. And as Mr. Roseberry stated, it was quite difficult to make the parking work. And then at a further point, the owner came in with the idea to reconfigure the building addition and the parking. So that's where we are now. Essentially, the removal of the angled parking along Suffolk Avenue. And then based on that and the time that had passed, it was decided to submit a new site plan application and start the process over. Much of the application is bringing the site up to current town standards and formalizing the parking requirements. Suffolk County DPW has been contacted and they are requiring all curb cuts fronting the property be closed with a single 35-foot wide commercial concrete apron to service the new parking area on the east side of the building. The 12.5-foot shared right-of-way access easement between this building and the adjacent building, which is 1091 Suffolk Avenue, would remain. Although the angled parking along Suffolk Avenue is being removed, which is a vast improvement in terms of functionality for the site, pedestrian and vehicular safety, additional mitigation for lack of overall landscaping on the site is being provided by the applicant, which was agreed upon during the last site plan. That would be the installation of brick pavers and decorative streetlights in character with the specifications of this hamlet along the property frontage. An approximately 20-foot buffer of white pine, eastern red cedar, and American holly is being planted at the northern handle of the property, which brings the buffer in line with the 10-foot buffer required as part of the 1995 change of zone for the adjacent property to the west, 1069 Suffolk Avenue. This property is a little bit deeper than that. So the 20 feet, even though it's more buffer, the front of it lines up with their 10 feet. The applicant will be removing all the property's dilapidated fencing in that area and install a standard 6-foot high chain link with stockade attachment fence. That's item 106, 107 to supplement the buffer plantings. The existing barber shop will be redesigned into a small portion of the proposed addition on the east side of that building. That parking calculation is the same as the retail space. Based on the overall building area of 8,961 square feet, so just shy of 9,000, a total of 60 stalls are required. However, approximately 7,100 square feet of the building is used strictly for storage of auto parts and not accessible by the public. If using the ITE one stall per 1,000 square foot calculation for that space, which the board has accepted in the past if the application was properly conditioned, only 20 stalls would be required overall. Based on those numbers, the 2-stall relaxation is a reasonable request. An informal shared parking agreement, as Mr. Roseberry stated, which is basically just verbal at this point, allows for one vehicle to be parked on the adjacent property, 1069. We have tried to open up dialogue with the adjacent property over the years. The original application for this property did a perpetual offer of cross access and shared parking because the adjacent property was in for a site plan application at one point. That stalled and they did not resubmit for a few years. So right now they would need to come back in with a site plan application. That was essentially to formalize the parking as well with all the uses, and their entire, in the rear of the building is a gravel parking area that they were going to improve, pave, curb, and then they would share parking with this property, but those discussions have not been fruitful to this point. Zoning Board of Appeals would be required for an FAR slightly over the 40% that's permitted by this zone. The amount is minor, however, it could be reduced if the size of the addition was brought down. The FAR would comply. Staff will work with Mr. Roseberry to make sure all those numbers are being calculated correctly and either meets code or needs a variance. So that will be ironed out. Based on that, staff recommends the board reserve decision tonight to allow us to work with the applicant on the outstanding items and draft potential site mod conditions for a future decision hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Questions from the planning board? Seeing any, Mr. Roseberry, would you like to add anything additional?
Just one item of my nature to address the commentary. Originally, when we put the site plan application back in 2011, we were going to try to rezone it to BU2 to try to keep the residential use. And I believe at the time, the planning department and the town board did not want to consider that. So we tabled that application. So we really tried to do everything to accommodate things here. It just was reaching to a dead end as far as parking, as far as configuration. And this is a cleaner, much easier configuration at this point.
Thank you. We'll leave that with you and Mr. Gonzalez as you further discuss this. I know Mr. Scoglio brought some things up that are not really items for the planning board, but certainly something that you or your client may want to address directly with who your tenants are in the building. Okay, thank you. Anything further from the board? If not, is there a motion? Mr. Frugier, you're on mute, but I'll take your motion if you unmute.
I'm sorry. I'll make a motion that we close this public hearing and reserve decision so that planning and the applicant has time to work out all the final details.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Frugier to close the public hearing and reserve decision. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? We are reserved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3 on the agenda, Aljac LLC, PB 2021-035, west side of Islip Avenue, State Route 111, 100 feet south of Pear Street, Brentwood, 1032 Islip Avenue. Applicant requests a modification of planning board special permit conditions associated with PB 2006-025 in order to increase the size of the restaurant. Site plan modifications may also be required as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant.
Good evening to the board. My name is Joseph Clemens, a partner in the firm German and Clemens Architecture PC, operating out of 3275 Veterans Memorial Highway, Suite B11, Ronkonkoma, New York, 11779. I am speaking to you this evening in regards to the request for a modification of Planning Board's special permit conditions associated with PB 2006-25 in order to increase the size of the restaurant, currently El Lamino, on behalf of my client, Mr. Anthony Aronica, the managing member for the property owner, Aljac LLC. The subject property of approximately 0.459 acres, which we are here to discuss, is located at 1032 Islip Avenue in Brentwood, approximately 100 feet south of Peach Street. Our office had attempted to assist the owner with legalizing some of the existing tenant spaces within the facility, including the El Lamino restaurant space. However, the zoning department requested the modification of covenants due to the increased unit size of the subject unit from approximately 1,600 square feet to that of approximately 1,800 square feet, as the prior conditions limited the size of the restaurant use. I would, however, like to note that the public areas of the restaurant have remained unaltered. The increased area has occurred at the rear of the space and includes additional dry storage space and a small employee area. The alterations made within the space also do appear to conform with the building code of New York State regulations as well. In comparing similar limitations placed on the restaurant and the facility as part of PB 2006-25 are still in place and carry over into the provided planning board special permit conditions and site plan modification conditions set forth, both of which my client are in agreement with. As a result of our request for modifications of the planning board special permit conditions, site plan modifications were requested as well. New street trees and superior front yard landscaping treatment in the front landscape island along Islip Avenue shall be provided to the satisfaction of the Town of Islip Engineering Division. Additionally, buffer fencing and screen planting will be installed and maintained along the western and southern property lines at the rear of the site. Other site improvements will be made as well to comply with the previous site plan approval as indicated in the conditions. As you can see, the property owner would like to maintain a property which conforms with the town of Islip requirements, while also providing something which contextually fits in with the surrounding area or enhances it. The modifications proposed would clearly not have an adverse impact on the surrounding community either. As such, we would respectfully request that you grant the modification of planning board special permit conditions, which would allow us to proceed in improving the facility in whole. Also, just to clarify and repeat so that you are aware, the property owner is in agreement with the conditions set forth, and as such has promptly executed them for submission to the planning department for their records. At that point, this concludes my presentation. However, I'd be happy to answer any questions which you do have.
Thank you. I do not see anybody who has signed up to speak for this. Did anybody join late who wishes to be heard? Hit the raise your hand function now. I'm not seeing anyone. I will note for the record, my paper here said 100 feet south of Pear Street. Apparently it's north of Pear Street and south of Peach Street, as you corrected me there on. I guess our peaches and pears were a little messed up there, but somebody didn't know their fruits too well. But just for the record, that is corrected. So with that, I'm going to go to Ms. Wozniak for a report.
Let me turn this around. How do I do that? Sorry, my video is the opposite way and I'm not sure how to flip it. So I'm just going to turn it off.
Yeah, turn it off. That'll be fine. Yeah.
Sake of time. But the property received a planning board special permit for a restaurant in 2000 and then received a modification of that special permit in 2006 in order to increase the size of the restaurant. Tonight, the applicant is again seeking a modification of special permit conditions to increase the size of the restaurant. The previous approval limited the size to 1,600 square feet, and the applicant is now seeking to increase it to 1,800 square feet. However, the seats are going to remain the same at 30. The site is in general good condition, however, lacks attractive landscaping along Islip Avenue and needs to modify current entrance and exit markings to match the previously approved site plan from 2001. Based on the minor change to the previous approval, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions, which require the applicant to follow the previously approved site plan and increase landscaping along Islip Avenue.
Thank you, Ms. Wozniak. Mr. Clemens, the increasing of the landscaping and the rest will take place.
Good. As far as I'm aware, that actually the original conditions were signed by the prior owner. I'm not sure the awareness of the new owner, but they are in agreement with the conditions set forth.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
Nope.
Is there a motion? Mr. Matamore? Unmute, Mr. Matamore.
I would move to close this meeting and grant the application subject to the covenants that's already worked out with a concern at least that those improvements be made. It certainly is significant that we're not increasing the number of seats so much as some of the backroom space for the restaurant, which is significant. But I think we as the planning board do have to insist that those improvements be made outside based upon our own investigation that it's woefully in need of some amenities outside that have not been put in as yet, and we'd like that to be accomplished.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Matamore to close the public hearing, grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions with special emphasis on those that were previously approved that were not completed, whether it be the previous owner, if it's now a new owner. Ms. Wozniak, are the conditions that are from the original are incorporated into this agreement as well?
Yeah, the conditions from the previous approval and then our standard typical conditions that you'd see for a restaurant today are kind of combined into what you guys see here.
Great. Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Mr. Bruno. All right. Ms. Cruz almost beat you, but she was hitting the unmute, Gary. She didn't go with just the raising the hand. So second by Mr. Bruno, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Item 4 on the agenda, Town Board application recommendation item. Bowler EM Realty LLC, CZ 2021-007, northwest corner of Sunrise Highway, State Route 27 and Belmore Avenue, Islip Terrace, 3239 Sunrise Highway. Applicant requests a modification of covenants and restrictions associated with TC 4774 and a town board special permit for a fast food restaurant pursuant to 68-302G. Site plan modifications may be required as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, fellow board members. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope everybody is remaining well, safe, and healthy, which is, as we all know, becoming a little difficult to do these days. This application concerns a proposed modification for the existing gas station site at 3239 Sunrise Highway over in Islip Terrace, also known by Suffolk County Tax Map number 500-298-156. Property is zoned business 3, consistent with the requirements of the Islip zoning ordinance. Station's been used as the property's been used as a gas station for the better part of 55 years now. Most recent history relating to the site concerned a complete raise and rebuild circa 2007-2008 for what you see there today. Property itself is fairly large. It's a little over an acre at 48,953 square feet. It's at the northwest corner of this North Sunrise Highway Service Road and Belmore Ave. It has 426 feet of frontage on Sunrise Highway and 120 feet or so on Belmore Avenue. Unfortunately, one of the interesting things about this site, and as we discussed when we appeared before this board on the 27th of October last year, the site is very long, and the way the site is laid out with the existing fueling pumps, 5 in total, and the canopy is almost 100 feet distant from the existing convenience store building. As gas station designs go, that's fairly long, and the reality is, and I know this board, we discussed with the board, customers simply don't like to get out of their cars and walk, particularly in inclement weather. Typically, the fueling pumps are a lot closer to the station. As a result, this station has been, as I believe Bola's Chief Legal Officer, Mike Lewis, testified at the October 27th meeting, an underperforming site. In fact, it's, from what I understand, somewhat of a money loser. As such, the applicant has proposed a modification to the site in hopes to, once again, turn it into a profitable endeavor and to provide greater offering to the Bola customers of adding a drive-through along the north side of the premises, wrapping around the west side, and then exiting on the south side of the building. The existing building is roughly 2,100 square feet. The proposed addition is roughly 920 square feet, or about a 31% increase in the size of the building. The addition would be built off the west side of the building, utilizing the western area of the property, which at this point is fairly underutilized. The applicant also proposed, and we discussed in great detail, extensive plantings along the north side, as well as the construction of a 6-foot solid white PVC fence along the north lot line. In addition, there will be additional landscaping put on site. Landscaping is proposed will be roughly 16,000 plus square feet. So there's a fair amount of green space on the site. I know the board is very familiar with the Bola brand and the Bola landscaping plans, and again, Bola being nationally and locally recognized for the seasonal landscaping which they use. The other day, I received a proposed set of covenants and restrictions from Mr. Colgan over in the planning department. He and I reviewed those proposed CNRs yesterday. I had offered some somewhat minor comment as to the CNRs because a number of them address, frankly, conditions which already exist on site. In addition to, maintaining, having brick fascia on the building and on the columns for the canopy, that exists today, although I think they were previously painted over white by the previous owner. So we would do our best to sort of sandblast them if that's feasible and bring back that brick color. Also, the applicant is not proposing to replace the existing ground sign, which is at the southeast corner of the property, right by Belmore and Sunrise. So the applicant would also like to keep that sign in place if possible. It's rather than putting in a new monument sign, it's certainly not an expense we're looking to incur right now. Before getting on the air tonight and speaking with our project engineer, Chris Tartaglia, who is with us, Chris pointed out that one of the conditions, I believe it's 7C or so in the draft CNRs, proposes either peaked or hip roof. We would just like to add the word mansard to that for the simple reason that it will be easier to help accommodate some of the mechanicals required for the food use for the drive-through. So if we could just include the word mansard in that condition, we'd greatly appreciate it. Other than that, we had no objections to the proposed conditions. With that, that concludes my recap of what we went through during the 27th hearing. I am available to answer any questions the board may have, as is Chris Tartaglia. And I believe we should have our traffic expert, although I don't see them signed in. Okay. So if there's any questions of us, we're all yours.
So why don't we go to Mr. Colgan for a report, and then we can come back for board questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This application was previously heard on April 27th of last year. Primary concern raised by the board at that time were the traffic impacts given the proximity of this site to the Heckscher Spur entrance. Just to go back to the town's traffic consultant's report, he did state that the existing site is located along a busy section of Sunrise Highway Service Road with numerous driveways and intersections. All traffic from westbound Sunrise Highway destined to westbound Heckscher Parkway must utilize the on-ramp located immediately west of the site driveway. In addition, speeds are high during non-congested hours, and observations indicate that vehicles attempting to enter the northern service road from side streets and access driveways experience delays. So he was just explaining that, there are traffic concerns. However, he did note and agrees with the applicant that this is an underperforming site. So the traffic coming in and out of the site isn't as great as a typical gas station that's running at full capacity. So based on that, the board will have to weigh the economic conditions stated by the applicant of the current site with the potential for adverse traffic impacts due to the increased traffic into and out of the site, should the new fast food restaurant draw additional customers there. So therefore, should the board grant the application, the staff recommends the attached covenants and restrictions. With regards to the roof covenant, the standard covenant we normally have is that the staff would review the elevations at a later date in the absence of seeing the mansard roof that Mr. Altman is discussing. So, if that's in the back, it's probably less of a concern architecturally speaking from the staff, but normally how we'd handle that is we'll review the elevations and the staff would work with the applicant to, create something acceptable, and contextual with that site. So that's the staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Colgan. So, Mr. Altman, I guess the preliminary thing is the 7C will remain the way it is, and you can work with staff at a later date.
Yeah, that's fine. I think, Chris, we can live with that. We're not finalized there. I will note in connection with Mr. Colgan's comment regarding traffic, particularly at this sort of unique spot. We did receive an email, and I think we mentioned this at the October 27th hearing dated 10/7 from New York State DOT, which has jurisdiction on Sunrise Highway, indicating no significant impact, no improvements required within the right of way. So I think that's important to note here as it relates to traffic concerns. I think in addition, if I recall, Chris, and correct me if I'm wrong, our traffic folks did do an accident history study. And in the 3 years preceding, there were, I think, 10 documented accidents in the area, 7 of which were rear ends, no fatalities, no serious injuries. That's a rather low accident history given this location. My recollection is checking the New York State DOT's traffic counter that this area sees roughly 30,000 cars a day. So, figure out the math. That's an incredibly low percentage. But other than that, like I said, we reviewed the proposed conditions, and Sean and I did discuss them yesterday. So with the exception of what we had discussed, we had no issue with the proposed CNR.
Thank you. Questions from the board? I'm just not seeing any questions from the board. Mr. Bruno. Can't hear you, Mr. Bruno. Nope, still can't hear you. We lost you.
Okay, muted.
Nope.
How about now?
There you go.
Okay, so I've had, to be very honest with you, Mr. Altman, and I have concerns. I live not very far from here. I don't know, were you at the hearing when we had it? Singh has spoken, and I told him I actually go to his other store on the Gulf one because this one's tough to get out of. Okay. I'm not saying we're unsympathetic or I'm unsympathetic to Mr. Singh's plight here. And let me be very clear. He's a very excellent operator. I have no concerns about that. Okay. This has nothing to do with Mr. Singh. As a matter of fact, if anything, Mr. Singh is a positive in here. But my question really has to do with future uses. He's proposing Burger King now. Mm-hmm. And I would say that Burger King probably doesn't have a major breakfast situation. And that area is pretty busy, real busy in the morning. And my concern has to do with ending up with something later that might be a coffee shop, a Starbucks, or something along that lines that is going to bring in additional traffic in the really peak time. How does he feel about a restriction on that?
That's an excellent question, Mr. Bruno. And I know we did discuss that at the October 27th hearing. And you're correct, BK, and particularly when it comes to a breakfast offering, is not even remotely comparable to, say, a Dunkin' Donuts or a Starbucks, which has
exactly, Mr.
a much greater draw. Even frankly, the McDonald's, it just doesn't have that kind of draw. So it's not anticipated to draw large numbers of cars during the breakfast time. What I would suggest rather is maybe a condition in the CNR which says if there is a change in that restaurant or fast food use, that we would have to at least come back to planning department or the town board for consideration in that regard. Particularly if yes, there is the potential for increase in traffic. Yeah, I don't think that's an issue. I think that's a fair request.
Thank you. And I would concur with Mr. Bruno's comments on.
Yeah, I think that's a fair request, and certainly from Bola's perspective, and I think we've always taken a fair and reasonable approach to applications. If we think it's something which is going to result in a greater intensity, we'll certainly have to do what we need to do to make sure that everybody is done safely and it's done appropriately.
Yeah, Mr. Colgan, what language would you propose in this case?
We should probably discuss that with the town attorney. We can certainly refer the subject to, but certainly any change to a coffee or donut shop, we could certainly add to the covenants. If the concern is that it's not a Burger King, but some other generic fast food restaurant, I would rather run that by our legal department to make sure it's sound and provides the proper mechanism to request that change at a future date. I mean, we can't tie it to a tenant. I know that.
That's correct.
But
maybe just tie it to traffic. Just say that if there's a change in use that results in an anticipated change in traffic, that we have to come back. Maybe keep it simple like that.
I mean, we have definitive data that coffee shops have a peak in the AM, and that's certainly when the westbound Oakdale merge is at its worst. So I have confidence that that type of language would work in terms of it switching over to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A. That I'd have to work out with the town attorney. If the board is comfortable with that, we can certainly make it subject to working out that language with the town attorney. And we'll move
I
forward.
think you should talk to the town attorney. You can't tie it to the applicant or the, the use specific.
Frugieri, I saw you unmuted. Did you have a comment?
No, I was going to suggest, I mean, we can make it that any change of use with that tenant would come back to the planning board, but I'm also okay with leaving it that we can have the applicant and planning work it out with the town attorney, the actual language.
That's fine.
And I'm okay with that as well. We have the, what the reservations are from the board and what we'd like accomplished there. If it can't be accomplished to the satisfaction of both the town attorney, the planning staff, and the applicant, then we can come back to the board for the next step. Is there anything further from the board? That being said, is there anything further from the applicant?
No, sir.
Is there a motion? Mr. Mattermore. Oh,
And unmute.
Based on these conversations with regard to the conditions and the town attorney and the like, I think the applicant is certainly being rational and fair on, and we are as trying to do the same thing as well. So based on those conditions, I would move to close the hearing and grant the application subject to those agreements and conditions.
there's a motion by Mr. Mattermore to grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions as well as the additional covenant, which shall be agreed upon between the town attorney, planning staff, and the applicant, which encompasses the concerns of the planning board, which is a change of use that's more intense, would be problematic and would have to come back before this board if there is such a change in use. Is that a fair?
Yep.
I would say that's fair. Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Mr. Frugieri. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you
Aye.
all. Have a great night.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, thank you.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Do we have a motion? Mr. Mattermore.
I would move to adjourn.
There's a motion by Mr. Mattermore to adjourn, second by
I'll second.
Ms. Cruz. Oh, she beat you this time. The hand was quick. Family feud, you would lose. All in favor? Opposed? Objections? We're adjourned. Happy New Year to everybody. Hopefully in person at the next meeting.
Take care, everybody.